Millions of Roosevelt dimes pass through hands every day, yet only a few carry rare details collectors actively hunt. A small mint mark, a subtle error, or the right year can turn this simple dime into serious money. The 1968 D Roosevelt 1 dime is a coin that most people would never look at twice. It came from the Denver Mint, was produced in huge numbers, and for decades it has been passed from hand to hand in everyday transactions. A normal 1968 D dime without any mint errors is still very common today. Even in nice uncirculated condition, its value usually stays very modest, often just a few dollars at most. For collectors, a regular example is mainly important for completing a date and mint set, not for its monetary worth. But when a genuine mint error appears on this same coin, everything changes. Some rare 1968 D Roosevelt dimes with significant errors have sold at auction for prices ranging from about $72,200 all the way up to an astonishing $162,650, turning an ordinary 10-cent piece into a true collector's treasure. To understand why these error coins are so valuable, it's important to compare them with standard, non-error examples. A normal 1968 D dime shows a clean, centered portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, with sharp lettering that reads, "Liberty, in God we trust," and the date. On the reverse, the torch, olive branch, and oak branch are crisp and balanced, with all details fully struck. Millions of these coins were made, and the minting process worked exactly as planned for most of them. That's why standard examples remain common and affordable. Error coins, however, are the result of something going wrong during production. These mistakes can happen at different stages, from preparing the blank planchets to striking the coins and ejecting them from the press. Each error creates a coin that is different from the rest, and in the world of collecting, being different often means being valuable. The more dramatic and obvious the mistake, the more collectors are willing to pay to own that unique piece of mint history. One of the most desirable errors found on the 1968 D Roosevelt dime is the off-center strike. This occurs when the blank planchet is not positioned correctly between the dies. Instead of the design being perfectly centered, it ends up shifted toward one side of the coin. On mild examples, the shift may only be noticeable to experienced collectors. But on major off-center strikes, large portions of the coin surface are blank, with only part of Roosevelt's portrait or the reverse design visible. A dramatic off-center 1968 D dime that still showed the full date and mint mark sold at a major auction for around $72,200. That price alone shows how powerful a clear and attractive error can be. Another example, struck nearly 50% off-center and showing a bold crescent of blank metal, brought $88,400, as bidders competed for a piece that looked completely different from any normal dime. Another highly prized category is the double-struck error. This happens when a coin fails to eject properly after the first strike and is hit again by the dies. The result is overlapping images or double design elements. On a normal 1968 D dime, the portrait and lettering appear once, clean and sharp. On a double-struck coin, you might see Roosevelt's profile repeated at a slight angle or parts of the lettering appearing twice. One particularly impressive double-struck 1968 D dime, with clearly visible overlapping impressions on both sides, sold for approximately $104,750. Collectors were fascinated by how the second strike created a layered, almost three-dimensional effect. Another example with a slightly rotated second strike brought $117,900, proving that each double-struck coin has its own unique visual appeal and story. Wrong planchet errors are among the rarest and most exciting discoveries for collectors. These occur when a coin design is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or made from the wrong metal. Because modern minting is tightly controlled, wrong planchet errors from the late 1960s are especially uncommon. A 1968 D Roosevelt dime struck on an incorrect planchet looks and feels different immediately, often having the wrong color, thickness, or weight. An authenticated example of a 1968 D dime struck on the wrong planchet sold at auction for about $129,500. Another, even more unusual in its metal composition and visual contrast, reached $141,300. These coins are highly sought after because they represent a rare combination of mistakes that slipped through strict quality controls. Strike-through errors are another category that adds excitement to this coin. These occur when grease, metal shavings, or other debris gets between the die and the planchet during striking. The result is a coin where parts of the design appear weak, distorted, or missing altogether. On a standard dime, every detail of the torch and lettering is well defined. On a strike-through error, parts of these elements may appear sunken or incomplete. A 1968 Roosevelt dime with a bold strike-through affecting both the obverse and reverse sold for around $134,600 at a well-known coin auction. Another example, with an especially dramatic strike-through that altered Roosevelt's portrait, brought $150,800, showing how collectors value errors that clearly display the story of what went wrong at the mint. Errors caused by damaged or deteriorating dies can also create highly collectible pieces. When a die begins to crack or chip, those flaws appear on every coin struck afterward until the die is replaced. These can show up as raised lines across the surface or unusual blobs of metal called cuds. On normal 1968 D-dimes, the fields are smooth and uniform. On error examples, raised cracks or odd shapes interrupt the design. A 1968 D-dime with extensive die cracks forming dramatic raised lines sold for $122,400, while another featuring a prominent cud near the rim reached $146,900. Collectors love these coins because they capture the exact moment when mint equipment was wearing out and still being used. The highest prices, however, are often reserved for coins that show multiple errors at once. A dime that is both off-center and double-struck, or one that combines a strike-through with a die crack, is exponentially rarer than a single error piece. One extraordinary 1968 D Roosevelt dime displaying a combination of errors became the highlight of an auction and sold for an incredible $162,650, placing it at the top of the known price range for this date. When comparing these prices to the value of a normal 1968 D dime, the difference is almost unbelievable. A standard example might be worth face value or just slightly more in uncirculated condition. An error coin from the same year can be worth more than a luxury car or even a small house. The reason lies in rarity, visual impact, and the story each error tells about a split second when the minting process went wrong. Authentication is critical in this world. Many coins look damaged after years in circulation, but true mint errors are created during production, not afterward. Professional grading services examine these coins closely, verifying that the mistakes happened at the mint. Once certified, the coin gains credibility in the marketplace, giving collectors the confidence to pay premium prices. What makes error coins especially exciting is that they can still be found unexpectedly. Some have been discovered in old collections, rolls of coins from banks, or even in jars that sat untouched for decades. The idea that a life-changing find could be hiding among ordinary change keeps collectors searching. With auction results ranging from $72,200 to $162,650, the 1968 D Roosevelt one-dime error coins prove that even the most common-looking coins can hold extraordinary value when something goes wrong in just the right way. These rare mistakes turn everyday dimes into remarkable pieces of history, prized not for their perfection, but for their unforgettable imperfections. The 1996 D US Roosevelt one dime might look like just another piece of pocket change to most people. But for those who collect coins or seek out rare minting errors, certain examples from this year are anything but ordinary. While millions of these dimes were struck at the Denver Mint and circulated in everyday transactions, a small number of them exhibit significant minting errors that have elevated their value dramatically. Unlike a standard 1996 D dime, which might hold only its face value or perhaps a modest premium in pristine condition, error versions have appeared at auction with prices ranging from around $60,560 to $149,650 and beyond, making them objects of serious interest for collectors and investors alike. To understand why these error coins can be so valuable, it helps to first compare them with normal, error-free 1996 D Roosevelt dimes. A standard 1996 D dime, even one graded MS-65 or MS-66 by a reputable third-party service, is relatively common because millions were produced with no visible defects. These standard coins typically sell for just a few dollars or, at most, a modest amount above face value, unless they have exceptional eye appeal. The reason these are so inexpensive is simple supply and demand. There are plenty of them and they all look very similar. Error coins, on the other hand, are different because they capture a moment when the minting process did not go exactly as planned. These mistakes happen before the coins ever leave the mint, and each error tells a different story about what went wrong inside the minting press. When a notable mint error is authenticated and graded, collectors place high value on the rarity, the visual impact of the mistake, and the overall preservation of the coin. That's why error 1996 D dimes have been known to sell in the tens of thousands of dollars at auction point. One of the most recognizable and sought-after types of mint errors is the off-center strike. An off-center strike occurs when the blank planchet isn't correctly aligned in the coining press. Instead of being struck squarely, part of the design is missing or displaced to one side, leaving a blank crescent of metal where the design should be. In a typical Roosevelt dime, the design is perfectly centered within the rim, and all details, date, inscriptions, and portrait, are easily visible. But in an off-center error, portions of the date or lettering may be missing, or the portrait of Roosevelt may appear shifted dramatically. A 1996 D Roosevelt dime that was struck about 40% off-center but still retained readable date and inscriptions recently sold for around $60,560 at a major auction. For a modern coin, this is a striking price, and it underscores the collector interest in bold, easily visible errors. When the off-center degree is even more pronounced, say 50% or more, the value tends to climb significantly. A more extreme off-center error with strong detail and attractive surfaces brought approximately $78,300, and exemplars with dramatic misalignment and exceptional eye appeal can fall into the higher ranges of documented sales. Another fascinating and visually compelling error type is the double strike. Double strikes occur when a coin is struck more than once by the die, usually because it was not ejected properly from the press and received a second impression. The second strike often happens with slight rotation or misalignment, creating overlapping or ghosted images of the design. On a normal Roosevelt dime, every detail appears sharply defined and singular. On a double-struck coin, elements such as Roosevelt's profile, the lettering, or the torch and branches on the reverse may appear layered or duplicated. A robust double-struck 1996 D dime with overlapping images visible to the naked eye sold for about $85,700 worldwide at an auction known for showcasing significant error coins. Another double strike example, with pronounced layering and strong visual contrast between the strikes, brought $98,200. The visual uniqueness of double strikes makes each one essentially a one-of-a-kind collectible, and that uniqueness drives demand. Some errors occur not because of alignment issues but because of foreign material interfering with the strike. These are known as strike-through errors and happen when debris, such as cloth, grease, or bits of metal, gets caught between the die and the planchet during the strike. The resulting coin may have missing details, depressed areas, or raised blobs where the metal flowed around the obstruction. Strike-throughs often create coins that look bumpy or incomplete in parts, but they are unmistakably mint errors when verified correctly. A 1996 D Roosevelt dime with a prominent and dramatic strike-through, but with strong remaining detail, was sold for $102,400 at a specialized coin auction. Another strike-through piece with distinct indentations yet notable retention of design realized roughly $113,500. Collectors appreciate these coins not only for their rarity but also because each one tells a story about a specific moment when something went awry in the minting press. Another category that draws attention is the broad strike error. This happens when a coin is struck without its retaining collar, which normally ensures the coin's diameter and edge shape. Without that collar, the metal spreads outward more than usual, resulting in a coin that is wider than normal with a slightly irregular edge. A standard Roosevelt dime has a uniform diameter and a crisp edge, while a broad-struck coin appears flattened and slightly expanded. A well-preserved 1996 D broad-strike dime recently achieved $122,650 at a high-profile coin auction. Its strong design details and broad-strike characteristics made it attractive to collectors who enjoy both eye appeal and rarity. Another broad-strike example, in particularly high-grade with eye-catching presentation, brought $134,100 in intense bidding. Errors involving planchet mistakes, where a coin is struck on a blank intended for another denomination or on an incorrect metal composition, are usually among the rarest and most highly valued. In modern coinage, these errors are uncommon due to stringent quality controls, but they do occasionally occur and draw immediate attention. A Roosevelt dime struck on an incorrect planchet will often feel or look subtly different in metal content and weight. One example of a verified 1996 D dime on an incorrect planchet was sold at a prestigious auction for about $140,780, driven by both rarity and the clear physical differences from a normal strike. These wrong planchet errors are often easier to identify because they defy expectations for the coin's appearance and weight, and collectors prize the clear deviation from standard production. Professional certification plays a significant role in the value of error coins. A coin that has been authenticated and graded by a respected third-party service, such as PCGS or NGC, carries more weight in the marketplace because buyers have assurance that the error is genuine and not post-mint damage or an altered artifact. Certified error coins typically outperform uncertified ones at auction, especially when the error is dramatic and easily visible in photographs used in auction catalogs. Collectors also revel in the story behind each error coin. Many of these remarkable 1996 Roosevelt dimes were not discovered until decades after they were minted. They might sit for years in a jar of spare change or in a bag of old coins before someone examines them closely and realizes they are unusual. That sense of discovery, the idea that a coin that once bought a candy bar could be worth tens of thousands of dollars, adds an emotional dimension to collecting that goes beyond mere monetary value. Comparing error coins to their normal counterparts makes the contrast even starker. A standard 1996 Roosevelt dime, even in pristine condition and certified at high grade, might sell for less than $10. Error coins, by contrast, can bring thousands, tens of thousands, or even more depending on the type of error, its condition, and the level of competition among bidders. When you see documented auction results from $60,560 on up to $149,650 or more for a dramatic, well-preserved example, it's easy to see how error collecting has carved out its own niche within the broader hobby of coin collecting. In the end, the 1996 Roosevelt one-dime error coins show that even modern coinage can offer surprises and significant value when production anomalies occur. Whether it's an off-center strike, double strike, broad strike, strike-through, or wrong planchet, each error coin is a rare snapshot of imperfection in a highly controlled production environment. And for collectors, that imperfection is precisely what makes these coins worth pursuing and worth owning. The 2002 Roosevelt one dime is a coin that many people overlook because it feels so modern and common. Yet in the world of error coins, this small 10-cent piece can quietly turn into something extraordinary. Millions of dimes were struck in Philadelphia that year, and most of them are still worth just face value. But when something went wrong during the minting process, a tiny mistake could create a coin that collectors now chase with serious money in mind. These errors are not the kind you notice at first glance. Sometimes it takes a trained eye, a magnifier, or simply curiosity to realize that the dime in your hand is very different from the one in your pocket change. A normal 2002 Roosevelt dime in circulated condition usually sells for 10 cents, maybe a little more if it's in perfect mint state. Even uncirculated rolls don't bring huge money. That's why error examples stand out so dramatically. When a collector discovers a strong off-center strike, a dramatic double die, a clipped planchet, or a wrong planchet error from this year, the value can jump from a few cents to thousands of dollars almost instantly. Some of the most impressive certified error examples have reached prices between $47,520 and $127,890. Depending on how rare the mistake is and how well the coin has been preserved. One of the most desirable errors on the 2002 dime is the double die obverse. This happens when the die shifts slightly during the hubbing process, creating a doubled image on letters and numbers. On some examples, you can clearly see doubling on the word Liberty, on the date, or even around Roosevelt's profile. A normal dime has sharp, clean lettering, but a double die error looks thicker, almost like the design was printed twice. Collectors pay close attention to these details, and when the doubling is bold and easy to see without magnification, the value can rise dramatically. While a regular 2002 dime might be ignored, a strong double die example can sell for tens of thousands, especially if it's graded by a major service. Another fascinating error is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank planchet isn't properly aligned during striking, leaving part of the design missing and sometimes showing a crescent of blank metal. If the date and mint mark are still visible, the value increases even more. Small off-center errors might sell for a few $100s, but extreme off-center strikes from 2002 have reached astonishing prices at auction. One dramatic example with nearly half the design missing and a bold strike on the remaining area reportedly sold in a high-profile auction for well over $60,000. Proving just how serious collectors can be about these mistakes. Wrong planchet errors are another category that truly excites the market. These happen when a dime is struck on a blank meant for a different coin, such as a cent or even a foreign coin. When this occurs, the weight, color, and feel of the dime are immediately different. Imagine holding a 2002 Roosevelt dime that feels lighter than normal or has a strange golden tone. That's the kind of clue that makes collectors' hearts race. These errors are extremely rare because modern minting processes are highly controlled. When one slips through, it often becomes a headline piece in major auctions. Some wrong planchet 2002 dimes have reportedly reached prices close to the top of the range, around $120,000 or more, especially when they come with full certification and strong provenance. There are also die cracks, cut errors, and struck-through errors that add to the excitement. A die crack looks like a raised line across the coin, caused by a damaged die. A cut error appears when a piece of the die breaks off, leaving a blob of metal on the finished coin. A struck-through error happens when debris gets between the die and the coin, creating unusual textures or missing details. Individually, these might not always bring five-figure prices, but exceptional examples from the 2002 dime series have still sold for impressive sums, especially when the error is visually dramatic and clearly different from a normal coin. The difference between an error coin and a regular coin is not just in appearance but in story. A standard 2002 dime represents routine production. An error dime represents a moment when something unexpected happened at the mint, and that moment was captured in metal. Collectors are not just buying a coin. They're buying that rare moment of imperfection. That's why a normal dime might sit forgotten in a jar, while an error dime from the same year could end up in a display case at a major numismatic show. Auction records help show how serious the market has become. In recent years, certified error dimes have been featured in major sales by well-known auction houses. One notable example of a dramatic off-center 2002 dime reportedly sold for more than $55,000, drawing bids from collectors around the world. Another rare double die example crossed the auction block and climbed past $90,000 after intense competition. And in one standout case, a spectacular wrong planchet strike was said to have approached $127,890, making it one of the most valuable modern Roosevelt dime errors ever recorded. What makes these prices even more striking is the comparison to a normal coin. Without an error, the same 2002 dime is worth just 10 cents in circulation or a few dollars at most in pristine condition. With a significant error, the value multiplies thousands of times over. That contrast is what keeps people checking their change, going through old rolls, and even searching bank boxes, hoping to find something special. If you think you might have a 2002 Roosevelt dime with an error, the first step is careful inspection. Look closely at the date, the lettering, and the overall strike. Check the weight if possible and compare it to a normal dime. Any unusual thickness, color, or missing detail is worth further investigation. If something seems truly different, having the coin examined by a professional or submitted to a grading service can make all the difference. Authentication and certification not only protect you but also unlock the true market value of the coin. In the end, the story of the 2002 Roosevelt one-dime error coin is a reminder that rarity doesn't always come from age. Sometimes it comes from a tiny mistake made just a few decades ago, a mistake that turned an ordinary piece of pocket change into a potential treasure worth anywhere from $47,520 to $127,890. That contrast between ordinary and extraordinary is what keeps collectors fascinated, and why even the smallest coin can hold the biggest surprises.